The federal Conservatives will choose their new leader on June 27th. Some people have already decided to throw their hats into the ring, including former Harper Cabinet Minister Peter MacKay. To talk more about it is our parliamentary reporter Ray Filion joining me from Ottawa. Ray, there's also talk that former Quebec Premier Jean Shuri may be interested, but is the guy actually a Conservative?
Well, yeah, a lot of people are wondering because he spent almost 20 years as a Quebec Liberal. You know, he ran the Liberal Party of Quebec. He was premier under the Liberal banner in Quebec for, almost 15, 16 years, something like that. So in Quebec, he certainly is identified as a Liberal. Look, this is a man who's got tremendous assets. He's fluently bilingual, speaks English and French. He would have no issues in any kinds of debate with the language. That wouldn't be an issue for him. He's got a lot of experience as a politician. He knows what the job entails. He used to lead the Progressive Conservative Party of Canada before he was, he got both arms and both legs twisted into going to Quebec to save Canada. He's known as Captain Canada. Remember him with his passport back in the referendum campaign in Quebec in 1995, working hard to save the country, keep the country together. However, he's also a guy who comes with some baggage. His tenure as Quebec Premier for 15, 16 years was not without controversy. The man is also under investigation. This is something that was reported this week. He's under investigation by some anti-corruption unit in Quebec. He's been under investigation for years. He hasn't been charged with anything, but there's still that cloud hanging over his head. So a very experienced and capable politician under investigation, who's got a lot of political baggage. Are the Conservatives willing to give him a chance? That remains to be seen. We still don't know if he's going to be a candidate. He let it be known just before Christmas that he was thinking about it. It came as a big surprise to a lot of people, but we still don't know for sure whether or not he's going to run. He certainly is very much interested in the job.
You know, Ray, Maclean's magazine had a story that former Prime Minister Stephen Harper resigned from the Conservative Fund Board to block Jean Charest to counter his potential leadership bid.
Exactly. So it came as a surprise on Wednesday. As you know, Stephen Harper, the former Prime Minister, one of the founding fathers of the current party as we know it, has always been very, very much involved. Even after he lost the 2015 election, he was a board member, running with other people, the Conservative Fund of Canada, which is in charge of the Conservative Party of Canada's finances. He abruptly quit. This is a story that was first reported on Wednesday by Maclean's magazine, which added a very interesting tidbit that Mr. Harper actually quit that job in order to free himself as a politician, in order to perhaps intervene during the upcoming leadership race that the Conservatives are about to have. Now, we're not expecting Stephen Harper to campaign actively for one or another of the contenders, but we're told that he wants to preserve the DNA of his party, and we understand that Jean Charest, in Mr. Harper's eyes, is seen as a threat to his party's DNA. As we said a few minutes ago, Mr. Charest is known as a liberal in Quebec. He used to run the Progressive Conservative Party of Canada, not the current party. And he doesn't see eye to eye with Mr. Harper on a number of issues, Hal, which is really interesting. So we're told that Mr. Harper refused to give Mr. Charest's blessing when Mr. Charest phoned him just before Christmas, informing him of his intention of perhaps running for the leadership. So there's a lot of bad blood between the two. It's going to be very interesting to see how this race unfolds, that's for sure. Things are going to be a lot more exciting, I think, if Mr. Charest decides to run.
Ray, another candidate expected to enter the race is Ottawa MP Pierre Poilievre. What's interesting about Poilievre is that he was kind of like a pit bull attacking Finance Minister Bill Morneau. Very aggressive guy.
Yeah, he's a very aggressive guy in question period. He's known as a bit of a pit bull. Actually, he almost ruined the current finance minister's political career a couple of years ago because he was badgering him every single day during a question period. He's very effective in the House of Commons. He always has good lines in both official languages. What's also interesting about Pierre Poilievre is that he hails from Alberta. He was born, I believe, in Calgary. Spends a lot of time in Alberta, but he represents a constituency here in the Ottawa area. He's a professional politician. He was first elected back in 2004 when he was 24, 25 years of age. A lot of experience. He's going to be, I think, if Charest runs, McKay, we already know, the former minister, is running. I think Pierre Poilievre, those three will be the top three contenders, that's for sure, in my view.
How about Aaron O'Toole? He's also expressed some interest.
Absolutely. He's another Ontario MP. He ran the last time the Conservatives had a leadership race back in 2017. He finished third behind Andrew Scheer and Maxime Bernier, two guys who won't be running this time around. He's not a very spectacular guy, not very flamboyant, but he's got a lot of content, a lot of things to say. And in all likelihood, I know he's been hiring a lot of people recently. Chances are he too will be jumping into the race probably sometime next week with a formal announcement. By the way, Hal, something really interesting. This is the booklet that every single candidate, every single person who wants to run as a leadership candidate has to fill out. 42 pages, 42 pages
Wow.
of questions about all kinds of things. You know, have you ever been arrested? Have you ever been the target of a criminal or any other kind of investigation? Have you ever declared bankruptcy? How many citizenships do you have? That's an interesting question because you know that it came up in the last election campaign. So if you're interested, I guess you have to be really open and really patient because you have to fill out a 42-page questionnaire.
Now, Ray, there's one more person I want to talk to you about as a potential candidate. It's former Harper Health Minister Rona Ambrose. I mean, you and I both interviewed Rona, very intelligent woman, very well connected. Has she expressed any interest?
Not at all, at least not publicly. I know a lot of people are interested in having her on the ballot. That's for sure. She's very popular. She impressed a lot of people a couple of years ago after Stephen Harper resigned as leader. She was the interim leader of the party, and she impressed a lot of people. Caucus loved her. She was able to keep the party together as they transitioned. They went through that leadership race in 2016, 2017. So a lot of people phone her, but she didn't return a lot of phone calls. The expectation is that she won't run. I know one newspaper this week, La Presse in Montreal, reported, they cited sources saying she's made up her mind, she's not going to run. However, we have yet to hear from Ms. Ambrose herself, so she hasn't confirmed anything. We're still waiting. There's going to be one woman in the race, Hal. Her name is Marilyn Gladu. She's an Ontario MP. Not very well known. She says she's pro-life. However, she's against reopening the abortion debate. She also said in an interview a few days ago that she's 100% in favor of same-sex marriage. As a matter of fact, she says she intends to walk in the upcoming Pride Parade next summer in Toronto. The rules are quite strict at this time. I talked about this booklet that every single candidate will have to fill out. They're also demanding a lot of money this time around from candidates, $300,000. We're talking here about a $100 refundable deposit plus a $200,000 entry fee. You also have to come up with 3,000 signatures from across the country, 3,000 signatures in 7 provinces. I spoke to Ms. Gladu's campaign team after the rules were published. We were told she read them and she's going to comply. She's still in. Unlike another would-be candidate, Brian Brulotte, an Ottawa area businessman who announced on January 6th that he was going to run, only to read the requirements published last weekend by the Conservative Party and then deciding, I'm going to bail out. He's no longer a candidate.
Ray, the Tories are not picking their new leader for another 5 months. Would Trudeau and the Liberals possibly call for a snap election before then to catch the Tories off guard and then maybe get a majority government?
Yeah, it's always a possibility, but I don't foresee that, not in the near future. I think that Justin Trudeau wants to govern for as long as he can. He's got to deliver something, from his last campaign. He made a lot of promises about cell phones, cutting taxes, so on and so forth. No, he wants to deliver something to be able to show the electorate that he actually did something in this mandate. I think it would be very nefarious if the government were to orchestrate its own demise just to have a snap election while the Conservatives are looking for, trying to find their new leader. I don't see that happening. Absolutely not.
Ray, the United States Senate recently passed the new NAFTA agreement. U.S. President Trump just needs to sign it. Mexico ratified the deal, I believe, back in June, but Canada still needs to sign. That should probably be a top priority when Parliament resumes on January 27th.
That's right. Parliament is set to return here in the nation's capital on January 27th. It certainly is going to be top of mind because Canada did put a lot of pressure on the Americans to ratify that deal. Now that it's done in Mexico, it's done in Washington, pending, of course, President Trump's final signature. It'll be up to Canada to ratify that deal. We still don't know exactly when the legislation for that to happen is going to take place, is going to be tabled. But yeah, for sure, that's going to be one major issue when Parliament resumes at the end of the month.
The Trudeau government is remaining tight-lipped about the so-called Megxit. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, tight-lipped because there's a lot of controversy. As you know, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are going to be spending a lot of time in Canada. Now, there was a couple of articles in the British press saying that Prime Minister Trudeau had assured the Queen that Canada was willing to foot the bill for their security. However, the Prime Minister said, no, that's not so. No decision's been made as of yet. We haven't had talks, he said, with the monarchy, with the UK. And one interesting tidbit, there was a poll that was actually published this week by Angus Reid Institute. 73% of Canadians who were surveyed said they don't want Canada to pick up the tab for Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. 1 in 4 Canadians, according to the same poll, say the royal family is less relevant today. 41% saying it has no relevance at all. Those numbers are pretty high, if you ask me. And I think what's going to happen, Hal, is there's going to be a big debate once Queen Elizabeth's reign ends about the monarchy here in Canada. Do we keep the monarchy? Do we move on to a presidential system like they have in many other countries? This is a debate that's going to happen. Personally, I don't think Canada is going to sever its ties with the British monarchy anytime soon because it's entrenched in the Constitution, and we all know what reopening the Constitution would mean. A lot of people will come to the table with all kinds of demands, some of them unrealistic. So I think the monarchy is here to stay.
Ray, many dignitaries, including former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney, recently attended the funeral for Liberal MP John Crosby, who died January 10th at the age of 88.
John Crosby was huge in Newfoundland politics. He was involved in provincial politics there. He became a cabinet minister in Mr. Mulroney's government. A big name here on Parliament Hill for many, many years. Quite an outspoken guy who ultimately went on to become his native province's lieutenant governor for a few years. A lot of sadness, and yeah, who's who of Canadian politicians was there in that cathedral in St. John's on Thursday for his funeral. Justin Trudeau was there. Brian Mulroney delivered a pretty good eulogy. Jean Charest, whom we talked about, Peter MacKay, many, Aaron O'Toole, they were all there, you know. Yeah, pretty sad moment, and a guy who will be remembered as an institution, I think, in Canadian politics.
Our parliamentary reporter, Ray Filion, joining me once again from Ottawa. Thanks so much, Ray.
You're welcome, Hal.